Okay, so today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to stage a kind of imaginary symposium. We're pulling together some of the most brilliant minds from psychology, neuroscience, and spirituality to have a big debate about the very nature of healing itself. I mean, just think about that for a second. What if you could get Gabor Mate, Joe Dispenza, and Eckhart Tolle all in the same room wrestling with the biggest questions about who we are and how we become whole? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore. Let's dive in and unpack their ideas together. You know, this whole conversation really kicks off with a massive shift in perspective, one that's championed by the consciousness teacher Sue Morter. It's all about moving away from this idea that we're somehow broken and need fixing, and moving towards something so much deeper, remembering. And this right here, this is the core idea that changes the entire game. Healing isn't some kind of repair job. It's about returning to a wholeness that, get this, was never actually lost. It's about this incredible intelligence learning how to fully live in the body. If you can really let that sink in, it reframes everything that comes next. All right, so let's jump into our first big debate. We hear this phrase all the time, right? The body keeps the score. But what does that really, truly mean? Is trauma a physical thing stuck in our tissues, or is it something else entirely? So here's the central question. Is trauma like a fossil, lodged deep in our muscles? Or is the body more like a canvas, just showing us where our consciousness had to divert and reroute? Our panel has some pretty fascinating and different perspectives on this. First up, we've got Dr. Gabor Mate. He argues that trauma isn't the bad thing that happened to us, it's what happened inside of us as a result. That tension you feel in your shoulders, that constant feeling of being on alert, he'd say those aren't the trauma itself. They're actually brilliant survival strategies your body learned to cope with the situation. Now, Sue Morter comes at it from a different angle. For her, the body holds patterns of interrupted energy. A good way to think about it is like a river that hits a huge boulder and has to divert its flow. The body, in her view, becomes a living map of all those diversions, showing us exactly where our awareness had to flee during an overwhelming moment. Then Dr. Joe Dispenza brings in the neuroscience. He explains that through sheer repetition, the body literally becomes the unconscious mind. It rehearses the emotion of a past trauma so many times that it gets conditioned. It actually starts to predict and automatically run that old trauma program without you even thinking about it. And for a totally different take, we turn to Rupert Spira. He suggests that, from the perspective of pure consciousness, nothing is ever really stored at all. What we call trauma is just a tight, narrow focus, a contraction of attention around a certain memory or belief. And the body? It's simply reflecting that tight focus. And finally, Bessel van der Kolk, the man who gave us that famous phrase, offers this beautiful way of bringing it all together. Maybe the body only keeps the score for as long as our consciousness is afraid to read it. So the key then isn't getting rid of the score, but developing the willingness to look at it, to read it without fear. This leads us perfectly into our next debate, which is all about the ego, a word that gets thrown around a lot, right? Is it this enemy we need to vanquish, or is it something we need to understand and work with? So what's the goal here? Are we trying to completely dissolve the ego to awaken? Or is the real work about helping it mature so it can actually serve a higher purpose? This one question creates a pretty big split down the middle of many spiritual and psychological paths. So on one side, you have thinkers like Eckhart Tolle. His whole thing is that you need to see through the ego. You disidentify from it. It's not about making it a better ego. It's about realizing it was never the real you in the first place. But on the other side, people like Carl Jung and Ken Wilber argue that no, a strong, mature ego is absolutely essential. Jung saw it as a necessary instrument, and Wilber gives this really important warning that trying to transcend an undeveloped ego just leads to what he calls spiritual bypass, using spiritual ideas to avoid dealing with your actual human stuff. And this quote from Carl Jung just nails the maturation viewpoint perfectly. The goal isn't to get rid of the I, but to shift its focus from I am the center of everything to I am here to serve something much larger than myself. Okay, so this brings us right to our third debate, the body itself. Is it just this meat suit that gets sick and breaks down, a limitation we have to drag around? Or could it be a portal, a gateway to a profound intelligence that our thinking minds can't even begin to touch? So let's reframe this whole thing. When you feel a pain, a symptom, some kind of illness. Is your body failing you? Is it malfunctioning? Or could it be that it's actually trying to communicate something incredibly important? Is it a mistake? Or is it a message? People like Moshe Feldenkrais offer a really practical path here. First step, just notice the symptom. But, and this is key, view it as a message, not a mistake. Step 2, inhabit the sensation. That means bringing your full, curious awareness directly into the physical feeling, without analyzing or judging it. And from that place of pure awareness, the body's own innate intelligence can kick in and start to discover better, more efficient ways to organize itself. And the profound takeaway here is this. Real freedom isn't about escaping our bodies. It's about inhabiting them so completely that no part of us is left out or left behind. Awakening isn't some out-of-body experience. It's a fully in-body one. All right, for our final debate, we're going to zoom all the way out. We have this cultural story, right? The image of the lone hero on their healing journey, climbing the mountain by themselves. But is that really how it works? Does healing happen in isolation, or is it fundamentally something that happens between us? I mean, can we truly become whole all by ourselves? Or is connection not just a nice little bonus, but maybe an absolute requirement for the deepest, most lasting kind of healing? And on this, the consensus from our panel is really powerful. Neurobiologist Daniel Siegel tells us that our brains are literally wired to heal in relationship through what he calls co-regulation, calming our nervous systems together. The philosopher Ian McGilchrist goes so far as to call purely private healing a left brain abstraction. And the physicist David Bohm suggested that healing is what happens when all our fragmentation dissolves within a shared field of understanding. The philosopher Martin Buber might have put it most beautifully. He said, healing is born in the between. The I, the self, can only become whole when it's in a real, genuine relationship with a thou, with another. And this just wraps it all up so perfectly. Maybe the ultimate point of this whole journey isn't just to heal ourselves in a vacuum. Maybe we're here to remember one another, so that in that deep act of connection, the self remembers it was never, ever alone to begin with. And so we end right back where we started, with this simple yet incredibly profound idea from Sue Morter. The work isn't about becoming whole. It's about learning how to stay with the wholeness that is already, right now, who you are. Not fixing a problem, but remembering a truth. So let me just leave you with this. What would change for you today if you believed that was true?